Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Every Horror Film Where Horror is Forever. And today we are talking another classic. That's right, back to the black and white style of genre of film. Last time we talked about Nosferatu, over 100 years old, but this time we're talking something different, something deep below the sea, something that is big, big as in Godzilla. That's right, we are talking the original Godzilla. Jeff, I can tell you're very excited for this review. Love the shirt, by the way. And
Yep.
this is really your kind of thing here. I have never seen Godzilla before until I watched this. I have always
Woo.
heard a ton about it. I know there are what, probably 20 plus sequels. Is that correct?
There's about 42, I think.
Okay, way more than I thought. So I only thing I knew about Godzilla was that it was a Japanese-based film, and I just know that it's been an ongoing franchise for for what, since the 50s. So that's all I really knew. I honestly have never really been a big creature feature type person where the monster is like a creature. That's usually not my thing, but hey, this is every horror film. We're open to every film there is. So, Jeff, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
I am just as amped to talk about this as I was to talk about Halloween 4 and The Thing. I, I feel confident in saying I am the biggest Godzilla fan you're ever going to know personally. I'm a massive, massive, massive Godzilla fan ever since I was 5 years old, man. I got every single one. I've had every single one. You can't see it right now, but I got Godzilla stuff all over this room, man. I am a huge Godzilla fan, quite possibly my favorite franchise of film ever. Um, to be debated in another way, but man, I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk about this. It is Black and White Month here at Every Horror Film, and we did Nosferatu. I wanted to pitch to you my favorite black and white film of all time. Yeah, I'm a little biased because I'm a Godzilla fan, but Godzilla, Gojira, 1954. I'm gonna
Is
I'm gonna
that how
start
you
off.
pronounce it?
Gojira, yeah,
Gojira.
Gojira.
Okay,
Yep,
gotcha.
that is the original Japanese name. And I'm gonna start off with a bang, man. This is one of the best movies ever made, hands down. Any genre, don't care. Don't care. One of the best movies ever made. You don't have to like the other ones. This is one of the best. So this is cinema at its finest, man, for sure. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room before we talk about the movie. We do horror movies, right? Every
Right.
horror film, we do horror films. Nosferatu, obviously horror. Exorcist, obviously horror. Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. You know it, dude. Everything we got coming next, you know it. Godzilla, when you say Godzilla to people like you who are unfamiliar, you get this image in your head of the giant monster guy in a rubber dinosaur costume trampling
Hmm.
buildings and kickboxing with other monster suits, right? That's the idea you get in your head, but a lot of people don't realize or don't appreciate the fact that Godzilla started as a horror film. The first one in 1954 was a Japanese horror film. So yeah, I might not be able to get you to talk about all 40 Godzilla movies. I might start my own channel for that. But I wanted to bring this to you because it needs to be talked about. When I pitched to you to watch Godzilla 1954, were you like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Were you just like were you ready to blow it off? Like, what were your expectations going into it, not knowing it? Were you questioning whether or not it was a horror movie? Where did you stand on it before you watched it?
I actually was very excited because there are so many originals and classics that I have not seen, despite my claim to be a horror aficionado. So I was very excited. Like I said, this really not like you kind of mentioned, people all guy in a rubber suit stomping on stuff and mass destruction, whatever. So I mean, I kind of was expecting that, but I figured there would be something more to this, and I'm glad to say there is. I can't speak for the other sequels. I haven't seen them, but this one here, obviously, there is a lot more to this movie than a guy showing up as a monster destroying a town. There's a lot going on, so I was very excited to watch this. and this a little bit out of my what I normally would watch. So that's got me excited even more. Am I missing something? And I'm really glad that I took the time to sit down, watch this movie, give it a chance because I had a really good time and I'm interested to talk about it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, everyone should give it a chance like that, even if you're not familiar. Godzilla, like I said, not horror isn't the first word you might associate with Godzilla if you're unfamiliar. I like to call Godzilla 1954 horror enough, where it's just grandfathered into the horror genre enough for us to talk about it. Signs is the same way. Maybe Silence
Correct.
of the Lambs or They Live are kind of the same way, where it's just horror enough for us to talk about. But
Correct.
that's good enough for me, man. I'm gonna take this one by the horns. I'm
Do it.
so excited, dude. You taught us about Nosferatu and German expressionism and silent film era in the last one. Get ready to get taught in this one, man, because dog, I gotta show you, man. This is one of my proudest Blu-ray shelf collection
Oh
items.
man.
This is the whole first timeline of Godzilla. It's cost me like 150 bucks because I got it way after the print. And this one's been worn like crazy. This is another timeline of movies. Man, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I should have flexed that real quick.
That's
Put that down.
awesome.
Dude,
That's awesome. And you get to go first because you own the movies. I
I
don't.
own Godzilla, man. So let's talk about it. Most people are familiar with Godzilla. Don't really have to delve into it. It is the giant monster. You know the iconic roar. You know the iconic theme song. You know it's from Japan. You know he breathes fire breath, radiation breath, whatever.
Mhm.
Everyone has some general idea of Godzilla. What they don't know, I'm glad we're doing it this year because this is a big year for Godzilla. This is the 70-year anniversary of Godzilla. This is the 20-year anniversary since his retirement. This is the 10-year anniversary since his return. And the end of this month, right like 2 weeks prior to this video coming out, the next one's getting ready to drop. I already got my IMAX tickets ready to go. I'm so amped. I'm just so happy we're talking about it, and I'm just gonna be throwing a million words a minute at you. So you cut me off because I'm not gonna stop. I'm just not gonna stop,
Don't
dude.
stop. Keep going.
So Godzilla, Gojira, 1954, black and white. 9 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the director Ishiro Honda was working with constraints. There was You got to think about where Japan was right after those bombs dropped. That was a top five worst tragedies of human history for real. You have to think about where Japan was at the time that this movie was being made. The U.S. was deployed in Japan. They were occupying Japan in any extent that they could post-war to prevent any kind of flare-ups after the fact.
Right.
One of their things that they were really hammering in on was anti-propaganda. So they wouldn't allow Japan to put out any kind of propaganda films or assemblies or rally the troops or anything like that for a few years, man, at least half a decade.
Mhm.
After those ramifications got lifted, even then, Japan was really kind of under, I don't want to say under scrutiny, but it was just under a microscope, man, to watch for any kind of just tension building things. But the cinema world of Japan did not shy away from talking about something like this. They Ishiro Honda wanted to create, which was what was popular at the time, was creature features, black and white horror creature features.
Mhm.
King Kong was popular in America at this time. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms came out, I think, a couple years prior to this, and that was really the bulk of big monster movies that we had then. So Japan wanted to do something, but they wanted to do something that wasn't just a 50s monster movie because that could come and go and you'd never see it.
Correct.
They wanted to make a statement, and they wanted to use the outlet of creature features to make that statement, and that statement was the impact and showing the world what kind of damage was done to Japan with these atomic bombs and this race to create a bigger weapon. When you're watching Godzilla, you're gonna notice that in the entire movie, Nagasaki and Hiroshima were never mentioned. Maybe they were working under a little bit of censorship, didn't want to poke
Mhm.
the bear too much, didn't want to really like hit it on the nose, but the message is there. The message is very clear. Godzilla is not just a dinosaur. Godzilla is not just a monster. Godzilla is the natural personification of the devastation that the atomic bombs brought to Japan. Everything about Godzilla is just, he's not a character. He is a force of nature. He is just this shitstorm that comes at you, and you really just have no way of dealing with it. And Ishiro Honda understood that that was the perfect allegory for the tragedy that Japan faced not even a decade prior. So I'm not going to run through the plot too much because
Right.
it's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty straightforward what you expect up until the ending. But Godzilla itself, the personification of atomic destruction, is Godzilla has been seen in many different ways. You can see him as a good guy. You can see him as a bad guy. You can see him as an animal. You can see him as a superhero sometimes. You can see him as a god. You can see him as whatever you want. But in this movie, he is the atomic bomb. You know,
Correct.
and everything about him, all the way down to his skin, man. His skin, it's not scales like a lizard. You can't really tell because of the cameras, but his skin is this dark gray, burnt leathery hide to resemble burnt flesh from the atomic bombings. The way he moves, the way that the actor in the suit moves, reminiscent of people caught in the blast zone, not knowing how to, just losing their motor skills, just blinded and deaf, and just like it's tragic. Really, the whole design of Godzilla is tragic. Early iterations of Godzilla's design had his head more mushroom cloud shaped, but
Mhm.
again, luckily Ishiro Honda knows what on the nose means, and he avoided that. But um, the movie opens up with just a quick shot of a fishing boat and a crew just hanging out by an island. Suddenly, the ocean explodes. Bright light, violent blast, you name it. Ship goes missing. Catastrophe. People on shore trying to figure out what's going on. You might want to jump to the conclusion that that is, oh, that's Hiroshima. Oh, that's Nagasaki.
Correct.
No, that is based on a true story that happened with this boat called the Lucky Dragon. The Lucky Dragon was off the coast, was a fishing boat off the coast of one of those islands that's not exactly Japanese territory. It's hard to explain. I can't tell you the jurisdiction of it, but there was islands where I believe America was testing the next round of atomic bombs, was testing atomic explosions, was testing their hydrogen bomb,
Mhm.
which, if for anyone who's seen Oppenheimer, knows that that came right after the atomic bomb. They were testing that, and the Lucky Dragon got caught in the crossfire. Like it, boom, radiation explosion. These guys just destroyed right there. So luckily, that was kind of a tipping off point that we didn't have to go all the way back to Nagasaki to talk about it. So nuclear testing in the Pacific is what mutated this animal that from the deep sea that the locals called Godzilla. He
Mhm.
mutated, he grew 150 feet tall, and he became the creature that we know today. Um, when when people go to investigate in the movie, they go to, I think it's Odo Island. They go to see what was going on, trying to figure out, put some clues together, figure out what happened to this fishing boat. They find this giant footprint in the mud. It's radioactive. Buried in the footprint is ancient species of trilobite from deep sea, like that were just trampled on. And everyone's like, "Oh, what's going on?" Suddenly, the gongs ring out. Something's coming over the ridge. We get, for the first time in human history, the first ever reveal of Godzilla himself coming over the mountain. One of the most iconic shots in cinema history is him over the mountain. What was your reaction when he was first showed on screen? Did you laugh because it was a hand puppet? How did it impact you?
I did not laugh because it was a hand puppet. My reaction was actually more of I was like I was very into this. I don't know a ton of the background of the film, but the way that they shot this movie is true craftsmanship in terms of cinema. I mean, they use so many different techniques in this movie and ways that they shot it. But Man, it was one of those ones where like you see Michael for the first time, you see Leatherface come out for the first time, you see Godzilla come out for the first time, you see Darth Vader come out for the first time. It definitely caught my attention, and that's one of the things I love about this movie is a lot of the stuff you mentioned, obviously, but for a good part of the movie, really until the the last third of the film or second third, you really don't see Godzilla too much. I mean, you'll see him a little bit here and there, but um, they don't show him a lot. So when you see him on screen, you're fixated on him, and the design looks great. I love the sound. I mean, every time it got me, every time I loved hearing it. And like you mentioned, the this film I could see the more and more I watch it, which I'm definitely going to watch it some more. Um, it feels like The Exorcist to me in the way that I don't even necessarily care about the scary parts or the parts where there's destruction. I like the underlying themes of what the movie's talking about, the characters, the plot itself. That type of stuff draws me more to the film than the fun stuff, I guess, as you could say. And that's something that obviously I love seeing Godzilla on screen, but I also enjoyed following the plot, the characters, the underlying themes of, talking about atomic bombs and things like that. And kind of at the end where they talk about things like that getting into the wrong hands of people, politicians, things like that. So, but to get back to your point, seeing him for the first time, definitely iconic scene. I was very, very shocked, and I was like, wow, I'm hooked.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, like The Exorcist, if you come in here just to be like, it's scary, you're an idiot, man. At this
Correct.
point, for real, like you have to look at it with a mature brain. And when I watched this as a kid, I'm here for the monster fights. I'm
Correct.
here for the action. I'm here for the set pieces. I didn't care for this one until I could appreciate the story behind it, until I could understand the context, until I could understand even filmmaking for the era, man. You have to you can't show a kid this and expect them to get it. Just like The Exorcist. So yeah, good point there. For the later half of the first act and most of the second act, really it's kind of there's two things going on. One, there's the human and government aspect of, do we tell the public? Do we start a panic? Do we just keep it under wraps? How
Correct.
do we keep it under wraps? What about our potential enemies overseas? We don't want to stir the pot, man. We're just beginning to heal. How do we deal with this? Lots of dialogue, lots of real subtle jabs at a lot of the political maneuverings of the World War II era. Meanwhile, Godzilla arrives back out of the ocean and commences his trampling of Tokyo. He commences the iconic trampling of the miniature cities, the miniature tanks, the villages, man, all the way down to the huts, everything, the electric wires, man, destruction, destruction, destruction. Some of the best out of that entire decade. The miniature work, unbelievable. The way the buildings were designed to crumble under someone the size of a 6 foot tall human, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. There was some shots where, because of the scaling, there was a tall shot with a little shot of people running down, and you can kind of see the two frames jiggling back and forth.
Yeah,
Minuscule complaint there. You know what I mean? You got to
exactly.
think about what you're dealing with here, but the sense of scale, I mean, you really get a good idea that Godzilla is massive. Godzilla is this massive force sweeping over the city, and the destruction that he's bringing, first to the little hut with the young teenager guy,
Hmm.
who's just screaming for his life, covered in rain, his family getting trampled, just absolutely just devastated in his home, all the way to the big city theaters crumbling, news crews on the roof, like watching buildings crumble as this massive thing comes at them, wires melting, Godzilla spewing his atomic breath, which is not fire breath. It's atomic radiation. It's pure atomic radiation, spewing it and just combusting every piece of matter in front of him. Unbelievable. The Yet another iconic shot of him looking at the train going by and picking up the train in his teeth and shaking it around.
Hmm.
that that sequence has been replicated in at least 3 or 4 other Godzilla movies. That's how iconic it is. The train in the teeth. It's super super iconic like that, because it really helps you get a sense of scale. Yeah, it's kind of funny to watch this hand puppet shake a toy train. But back in the 50s, that shit looked real.
I mean, I honestly had no idea it was a hand puppet.
Yeah,
I don't know how they pulled off a lot of the stuff, but I mean, I'm not going to say it had me fooled, but I had no idea it was a hand puppet.
it was done so well. The suit in the big, tall head to toe shots was a full body suit. He had the suspenders with the reptile legs, and he put the top half on and the helmet. The whole suit weighed like 200 pounds, and it got up to like 130, 140 degrees inside of it.
Oh my
It
goodness.
was nasty, but that kind of craftsmanship and that kind of dedication pioneered the way for this whole subgenre of filmmaking that was really big in Japan and all the way through things like Power Rangers, and we're still getting it now today.
Correct.
Suitmation, a guy in a suit, a guy in a monster suit, a guy in a robot suit. Godzilla pioneered that. King Kong was not suitmation. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was stop motion clay, I think. So this was the first time you ever see a guy in a suit as we know it now. Now you'll see that everywhere, man. They're still making
True.
movies with guys in a suit. But massive devastation. Some really, really good grounding shots in this. Most namely and most famously, the sequence of the mother caring for her kids in a corner by a building while everything's going on. Sparks are flying. Godzilla's approaching. There's no music playing. She's just screaming and hiding the kids. Like, we'll be with dad soon. We're going where dad is. Dude, that's some heartbreaking shit, man. That
Dude,
was
I am so glad you brought that scene up because again, when that scene happened, I my jaw like dropped.
that was dark.
I was like, wait, is she talking about like, we're gonna go to heaven after this because she knows they're gonna die. I mean, that was really a uh that scene grabbed me and I was like, wow, and one of the things that I really throughout the course of watching this movie is, this made me think of, what if there was a scenario like this in real life where, you had a creature like this that would come out of the water, or, you know, aliens come down from the sky and they take over. What would the reaction be like from people? What would the government do? What would, what would all that be like in scenarios, running through my head, all those things like that. And, obviously this is a fictional thing, but watching this happen just really kind of makes you wonder, what if, the United States or another part of the world got put in a situation like this? What would happen? What would have to take place in order to destroy or kill something like this? And that's scenario played out in my head a lot. And I tried to put myself in that position. I'm like, what would I do if I was here in this position and this happened?
Yeah, exactly. You like to think that you'd be prepared. You'd like to think that the government's got you covered, but when something that, in the worst sense of the word, awesome comes out of the woodwork, you're not going to be prepared for it. Now, replace the word monster with atomic bomb.
Correct.
What happens when this new destructive power that the world has never seen before is suddenly unleashed on the city? I mean, one of the best lines in the movie is a blink and you'll miss it line. It's one of the commanders on the radio where he gives the order to stop firing, to stop trying to kill Godzilla because he just can't deal with it. Just focus on saving as many civilians as you can. Dude, the destruction and the mayhem going on for the government to pull the plug on military action in the middle of it happening and just say, at this point, save what you can.
Hmm.
Holy shit. If that's not the most
Crazy.
fear inducing apocalyptic thing you've ever heard, I don't know what is. Especially for that time, man. You just got to think every time you see this, you've got to pull yourself out of thinking it's a monster movie and put it into the atomic bomb era. You've got to replace Godzilla with that and to really understand the horror of this.
Correct.
The mom there with her kids, maybe the dad was a soldier, maybe the dad was a Japanese soldier, and that's why he passed away years prior,
Correct.
to see this kind of destruction coming at them, saying we'll be with Dad soon. Replace Godzilla with a mushroom cloud, man.
Yeah.
That's dark as shit.
That's yeah, that's that line really got me. I'm really glad that you brought that up. I was gonna ask you a couple questions
Yes,
if you're cool with that. All
I
right.
got them all. Yes,
All right, so I'm gonna refrain from using the names of the characters because one, I don't remember them all, and two, I
sure.
will not pronounce them. So we have this other plot where you've got this professor, and then you've got his daughter, and then you have her fiance wants to marry her, and then you have the lady's brother or whatever. I'm assuming that's the connection.
It's a love triangle. There's Professor Yamane and his daughter Amiko. There is the tall, charming fiance Ogata or Ogato. I don't
Oh,
really
oh,
remember.
yeah.
And then there's the scientist, Dr. Serizawa. It's kind of a love triangle thing.
So, what's the relation between the guy and the girl, the fiancés and the scientist?
So the daughter and the fiance are due to be married, but Dr. Serizawa, from what I understood, was her ex-boyfriend,
Oh,
maybe
okay.
ex-husband. There's history there. There's trust there. There's personal connection there. The fiance is uncomfortable whenever she goes to see him, but there's bigger things at play here. So it is.
I thought they were brother and sister. I guess I
No,
missed that.
no, it's
Okay.
it's it's like an ex kind of thing.
Okay.
So Dr. Serizawa is Emiko's ex, and
Gotcha.
so good transition to the characters, man, because the characters are the biggest part of this movie, believe it or
Correct.
not. Dr. Serizawa is working on something in his lab, and he won't tell anyone what it is. A reporter comes and tries to talk to him, but he refuses. Emiko, who has had history with Dr. Serizawa, comes and tries to talk to him, and he's just all over the place. His head is a mess. He's First of all, when you first see Dr. Serizawa, you think he's the bad guy. He's dressed in this long white lab coat, the big black rubber gloves. He's got the eye patch over the eye. Evil scientist. Right away, he looks like stereotypical evil scientist. She goes to see him and she goes to visit his lab to see what he's working on. He's like, I have to tell somebody, I have to tell somebody, but I can only tell somebody that I trust. I don't want to tell the press. I can't tell anyone else out of this house. I'll tell you because I need to get it out there. This is what I'm working on. Takes her down to the lab, takes him to the area where he's got a fish tank full of exotic fish. And he drops something the size of a marble into the water of the tank. And he says, watch this. The oxygen dissolves from the tank, and the bodies of the fish erode into nothing but bone within a matter of seconds. Just a big flash, and all life is literally evaporated from that water source. Horrifying stuff. We don't see it up front, but Emiko screams. She doesn't like what she's seeing. Dr. Serizawa found that out accidentally. He wasn't trying to do that, but he made that accidental discovery, and he called it the oxygen destroyer because it destroys oxygen in a body of water and oxygen in your cells. A little bit of science fiction mumbo jumbo. You don't need to worry about what it does exactly, but you need to know that it is more devastating than an atomic bomb or an H
Right.
bomb. So it's a big deal. And that's why he's stressing out. He's like, man, I can't tell anyone. As soon as any government gets wind of this, they'll come and they'll take it and they'll replicate it and they'll destroy all life on this planet with it. So I can't tell a soul. And you have to promise to never tell a soul. I will literally die before I let this get out. She's like, I promise, I promise, I promise. And they go about their separate ways. Godzilla does his thing,
Mhm.
devastates the city. Uh, Professor Yamane comes home just stressing because he doesn't want to kill Godzilla. He doesn't want the government to kill Godzilla. He wants to
See
research it.
that I was going to interject, Brenda. That was
Yes.
the question I was going to ask you was, what was your thoughts on, the professor saying, "Wow, yes, this is bad. We have this dinosaur on the loose, essentially killing people, but this we don't want to kill it because it needs to be studied because it's ancient. It's so far, so millions of years old. versus the other side where the people are like, look, we need to do everything we can to take this thing out. What was your perspective on that? Who do you think's right? Who do you think's wrong? Kind of what do you think?
It's That's tricky because there's a bunch of different ways you can slice that. Professor Yamane, from the moment he found the footprint, immediately fascinated, like, oh, this ancient trilobite from the bottom of the ocean, like research, research, research. I need to know. I need to learn. This is a great opportunity.
Mhm.
And all the way to where he's just rattled in his house talking about this. He doesn't want to kill Godzilla. He thinks we should research it. He thinks that Godzilla is the answer to the resistance to atomic weapons. He thinks if we can research it and harness what makes Godzilla invulnerable to this kind of radiation, it'll do wonders for human advancement.
And didn't just one more question,
Yes.
didn't or wasn't Godzilla discovered basically because they were dropping bombs and it disturbed his natural habitat underneath water and he kind of it was that is that correct or
The general consensus is that he was a deep sea creature that never bothered anybody, but the H bomb testing on those islands mutated him and
mm,
caused him to surface.
okay, gotcha.
So he is an innocent force of nature in all this. He's an animal. Professor Yamane, you can now his perspective. It's easy to say, no, you're wrong. Let's blast this thing to smithereens. We don't want to deal with it anymore. But you have to look at Professor Yamane in two different ways. You can look at it in the way of the monster movie, and you can look at it in the way of the history lesson. In the way of the monster movie, yeah, he's right. We should research Godzilla. We should get cell samples. We should get biological studies done. We should learn all we can about this animal who we've not only never seen before, but is massively resistant to these weapons of mass destruction, which are now a part of our world. We need to research this. Yes, absolutely. Do all the research that you can. Or you can interpret it the history lesson way, which is Professor Yamane is in favor of atomic destruction. We're saying that this is a good thing. We need to research this for the advancement of mankind. You can interpret it as not malicious, but dangerous. It is a dangerous, slippery slope to say, hey, this walking mushroom cloud that's sweeping over the city, let's learn from this. Let's learn all we can, reflecting Dr. Sarazawa's nervousness about people being eager to just find the next big thing. So there's two different ways you can look at it, and neither one of them are wrong. And Professor Yamane is not a bad dude. Um, but it's just a matter of interpretation, man. And I think most people at the time, and I think the general consensus is no, Godzilla's got to go. He's got to go, man. Take him
Yeah.
down.
I mean, I get both sides and I feel like I would understand the professor side as well, but when if it was a situation like that in real life, we would have to take that thing down. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Got to take it down. It's got to be stopped. No doubt about it.
We
Everyone's
can't
on board.
learn to live with it because it's just going to eventually kill everybody.
Yes, exactly. And if we try to learn with it, you're only going to create it again. So, um, Ogato, I can never remember, and Emiko determine Godzilla's got to go, and Emiko breaks her promise, and she tells her fiance that Dr. Sarazawa has something that can defeat Godzilla. Takes him to see Dr. Sarazawa, tells him, I broke my promise. I'm so sorry. I had to. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I promised I never would, but something's got to be done. Sarazawa and the fiance, they have a tussle back and forth. No, 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 you can't use it. You can't use it. Like, I'll die before you use it. Tries to destroy his notes right there. They go at it for a little bit back and forth, and neither one of them are wrong. It's a great debate scene, and honestly, I'm I'm with Sarazawa. It's a very sympathetic character. These guys aren't complex, but Sarazawa is very sympathetic, and I very much am with him. Like, this researcher's got to die with you, otherwise it's going to get in the wrong hands. So that whole debate about using the oxygen destroyer to take out Godzilla is it it can be sliced a bunch of different ways.
Mhm.
depending on how you want to interpret it. You can interpret it the monster movie way, in which case he just doesn't want to give up his creation. It's for the good of all mankind. We can't use it. We can't show the world. Or you can take it from a history angle again. You know, what was Ishiro Honda, the director, what was he trying to say with Sarazawa's stance on this weapon? Was he trying to say that atomic weapons should have never been released to the public in the first place? Is he trying to say that we should stop there and not advance any further than that? Is he trying to say that Japan has something stronger than atomic weapons but refuses to show the world out of the good of their hearts? Is he saying any number of things? Is he making a jab at someone like Robert Oppenheimer, who developed this weapon but was so eager to hand it over to a military? Is he making that kind of criticism about the Americans? Is he saying, hey, when you have power like this, it is your responsibility to hide it from the world? You know, lots and lots of different interpretations with Sarazawa's stance on it. Um, and none of them are wrong. You know, they're all right in their own way, and that's what makes it so beautiful. Um, ultimately, ultimately, Sarazawa agrees. He agrees that for the good of the people, he's seen the destruction that Godzilla has left, and he agrees to use his weapon, if only the first and last time that it's ever used. He wants to see it through, and he cannot disclose any information about it because people will try to recreate it.
I sorry,
Cut me off, dude.
you're good. So obviously we get to the ending kind of but the scientist professor, excuse me, the scientist, was he super well known like throughout Japan and throughout the okay, because it's just funny because I was thinking, I was like, wait, this guy says he just has this bomb that's gonna work, and no one like is like, well, how'd you make it? He's like, I can't tell you. You just gotta trust me. And it's like, all
It's
right,
like
fuck it.
I got something, but you can't see it. Nah,
It's like
yeah, no.
I can't give you any details. You just gotta trust me. It's gonna work. I think at that point, everybody was just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and I don't really know what his credentials were. I don't think he was working for the government at that point. I think he actually wasn't, and that's why this was such a good thing. You know, the scene on the boat where everyone's gathered around to help him deploy this weapon.
Hmm.
There's no military. There's no government agency. It's the good of the people coming together to hide it from the rest of the world, as what should have been done with atomic weapons. But yeah, I don't know what his credentials are. That's funny, actually. Like I
I
said,
was just thinking, I was like, he just shows up. He's like, dude, you guys gotta trust me, but we're about to kill Godzilla.
hey, I got this giant weapon in my basement. Yeah, yeah. I think they were more concerned with making the statement than making the backstory. But
Yeah.
you know, Sarazawa and Ogata. I'm gonna screw that up the whole rest of the review. They decide to deploy the weapon, and Sarazawa wants to make good on his statement where he will die before he lets it get in the hands of someone else. He offers to go down into the water and deploy it himself. The fiance helps him out. They're doing this. Two people banding together and doing what the government could or should not do for the protection of humanity, and just taking that mantle of responsibility down with them. It's very beautiful, and it's a nice underdog wartime story
Hmm.
too. Very very lay yourself on the grenade type deal. Um, but they go under the ocean. They find Godzilla through where the radiation is spiking. Sarazawa, I believe, cuts a line on his partner's suit, and it makes him float back to the top. Or I might be mistaken for something different. Something happens where Sarazawa determines you've got to go back. You've got to go be with her and keep her safe. I'll take care of this. He goes. He walks straight up to Godzilla. He unlocks the oxygen destroyer, and he destroys Godzilla. Um, Godzilla is flailing out of the water, crying, not roaring, but crying and screaming. The soundtrack is not triumphant. It's not the theme song. It's not awesome. It's sad. It's that sad, somber tone.
Hmm.
Everyone's watching quietly while this this animal who didn't want to be there in the first place is being destroyed by someone
Mm.
who didn't want to die in the first place, all because humanity can't be trusted with these weapons. Oh my god. you
It's
know,
a incredible story.
such good writing, man. And everyone on the boat, no one's cheering, no one's clapping, no one's happy that Godzilla was destroyed. Everyone is sad and crying over the loss of their friends, over the disappointment in the government that they couldn't rely on them to take care of this, over the disappointment that it even had to get to this point and Godzilla even had to exist. Professor Yamane, he sits back down and he reflects on his stance about researching Godzilla. And he takes a minute and he thinks about it and he delivers the big punchy statement of the movie, the most on the nose the movie writing is going to get. And he basically says something along the lines of Godzilla can appear anywhere and take the form of anything if we don't stop A bomb and H bomb testing.
Yep.
Cut to black, man. It's not a happy ending, it's a sad one. Whew.
Man, great stuff. I mean, kind of like you mentioned, I mean, it was very uh very sad ending, but not in the way that I don't really know what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to
Tragic.
say is it is tragic. And it's tragic in the way not like, oh man, this is sad, like depressed. No, it's not. It's more like you mentioned, you had this monster that was below the surface, no one was messing with him, and then all of a sudden he becomes a subject because of what happened. And then all of a sudden you've got these people who don't want to be messed with, and because of what happened, they're affected. There's many people that are affected by many different things, and they all come together and you know they all have this tragedy, but something has to give, and ultimately we have people dying because of Godzilla dying because of he was being attacked by a bomb, and then the scientist, risking and giving up his own life to make sure he could take care of Godzilla and eliminate the problem. It's just a lot of different angles to look at, and the more you think about it and the underlying themes and things like that, it is a sad story, and but that just is a testament to the storytelling, the writing, and the characters. Because you see a film like Godzilla, you see a film like Halloween, you see a film like The Exorcist, you look at the cover, you say, "Oh, it's a scary movie. Oh, it's a movie about a guy stabbing people. It's a movie about a monster destroying stuff." No, there is way more to this than that, and
Mm-hmm.
they did a tremendous job. I can't wait to go further into it and research the movie more and see other people's thoughts and opinions on it.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a book out there about the making of Godzilla, I need to get it because it's an amazing story. It's not just a monster horror movie. It is a political statement masquerading itself as the creature feature of the decade. It's
Right.
masquerading itself because you weren't allowed to talk about the things that you're talking about in this, but they did it. And for it to become the hit that it was, I mean, what I believe is the longest actively running movie franchise in history.
Yeah.
Top 10 most iconic figures in fiction of all time. The roar, the theme song, everybody knows Godzilla. Every country has its own iteration of Godzilla. And even countries who haven't experienced tragedy that Godzilla was born out of, they get it. They get the gravity behind it. They
Mhm.
understand why he's a staple. We unleashed Godzilla. Godzilla is a part of human history now. As beautiful as that is from a franchise perspective, amazing, dude. Just I can't say enough good things about it, and all the layers that went into this movie is so damn good. And if you just go into it for a monster smashing things, this is not the movie for you.
Correct. Just gonna ask you a couple more questions.
Mhm.
What was the reception like upon release in Japan? How,
Oh,
how
it
was
was
that?
huge. Huge. It blew up right away. It blew up so much, in fact, that overseas, America wanted to pick it up. America was catching wind of this awesome monster movie that was making waves in Japan. Through some legal loopholes, they got the rights to it and they re-released it in America 2 years later in 1956, and they dubbed it Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, it wasn't just a re-release of the Japanese movie. What they did is they did what Joss Whedon did to Justice League. They took a beautiful movie, they chopped it the hell up, and they inserted different pieces of their own actors and their own bullshit into it. And they put this American guy in there to be like relatable for American audiences, where he's a reporter on the scene describing everything that happened. And
Modern audiences.
modern audiences. This guy, he just comes in and just dumbs it down and waters it down, and just makes it a creature feature. There's no message behind it. Some of the some of the atomic some of the atomic age commentary is just stripped of it because they thought that American audiences weren't ready or able to see that kind of, hey, this is what you did to us for coming from Japan, you know. So it was recut and it was just turned into a generic creature feature. I don't like it. It's got its place in a lot of people's hearts because a lot of people, that's their first time ever seeing Godzilla, was in
Correct.
that American version. But some of the best parts of the movie, man, were just completely ruined. Like that woman in the corner, cradling her kids. You know, I said that there was no score in that scene, and it was beautiful and it was haunting. In the American version of it, they slapped the theme song over it. They didn't even give the woman subtitles. You couldn't hear what she was saying because they didn't want that dark, dreary atmosphere. They wanted a monster movie. So they wanted the spectacle. So they just butchered it, man. And I think one of my other favorite scenes in the movie is when they're recovering from the chaos and everyone's kind of like healing, and all the sick and the injured are all in like a gymnasium or something like that, and they're walking amongst the beds. There was one moment where it cuts to this mom who is deceased on the ground covered in blood, and her like 4-year-old daughter is screaming at the top of her lungs while the saddest theme song I've ever heard come out of the 50s plays. And
Hmm.
they're like trying to comfort this kid, but this kid is like screaming bloody murder because her mom is gone. Dude,
Yeah.
look, I'm gonna say it, man. Since becoming a dad, watching shit like that, until you have a child, until you have a child, you just don't get the gravity of that situation. That's my Family Guy quote for this episode. But hearing that kid scream for her mom dead on the floor, oh,
Yeah.
you always see Godzilla movies with CGI crowds running away and people getting stomped on. You never zoom in close. You never get down on the ground, and you never see one person dead from it. You never get that close and grounded with it. So extra layers of impact with that. But like I was saying with the American version, I think that was cut completely and replaced with this American character having a boo boo. It was ridiculous. But the American version, it's easier to chew if you don't want the message. If you just want the stomping on the buildings, watch the American version. But
I'm good.
don't watch the American version, man. You don't need to.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else. Another thing that I, you know, kind of liked about this movie and I found relatable is that obviously, my job, I work in the media.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of the media in this movie, the media trying to get answers. They're showing up to all these events and they're on the radio and they're describing, oh my goodness, what's happening? This monster is coming out. And there's a lot of shots of newspapers coming out and headlines and things like that. I don't know if there's any deeper meaning to that than, maybe what happened with, Hiroshima and things like that. I'm sure there is, but just little things like that, obviously I've never covered anything that crazy or probably will, but seeing that it just made it a bit more relatable and I did enjoy
Yeah.
that aspect of it.
I bet that's an angle that some people watching this movie don't have unless they have the kind of experience that you do. You to know what it's like behind the scenes and to have that get out to the public. I mean, you even have the aspect of them trying to cover it up.
Correct.
How do you cover up something that big? But the fact that it was even being debated and then to see it come out in the press, you
Mhm.
just understand the kind of mental gymnastics that a government has to do in the wake of something like this. So yeah, that's a cool angle, man. Let's hope you never have to cover anything like that.
Yeah, unless it's aliens, I think
Yeah, that'd be cool.
that would be cool.
Yeah, man. So tell me, you're not a Godzilla fan. Are you a Godzilla fan now? Tell me about your response to the movie. Did you pick up on everything? Is it what you expected? Did it blow your mind? Is it not for you? Where do you stand
It's
on it?
It's definitely not what I expected. I didn't expect to come in here and just watch, stuff get blown up. I figured there was going to be something else
Yeah.
there. And the little pieces that I got from you before I watched it, I kind of knew there was going to be something there. But this movie blew my expectations. I'll be honest, I went into it. I'm not really into, I hate using this word now after this movie, creature features,
Yeah, monster movies.
because
Yeah.
monster movies, whatever. This isn't a monster movie. This is a movie that involves a monster, but it's not a monster movie. And I mean, I got to be honest, this movie was amazing.
Mhm.
I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm very interested to see where some of the sequels go. I don't know if there, I mean, God, you said there's like 40 some movies.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see where some, I might not see all of them, but I can say for a fact that I'm a fan of the original. This, great filmmaking, great storytelling, great writing. There's so many layers, things that you could discuss. I mean, this is one of those reviews where we probably could go on for 3 hours, like The Exorcist, and
Mhm.
just talk about every single action and layers underneath that. Uh, yeah, I was blown away, and it just goes to show, a lot of people, not everybody, because obviously Godzilla is huge, but for some people, they don't give other countries their genres of films a chance. Some people might. This is a Japanese horror film. I'm not going to watch this. I don't know Japanese. I don't know this. That doesn't matter. There are German horror films people aren't going to watch. There are
Right.
Russian horror films people aren't going to watch. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there that you could be watching, you could be missing. Here I am, 26 years old. I've never seen Godzilla. I'm mad that I took this long to see it because there's a lot of good stuff there. So my advice would be, hey, watch everything that you can from no matter where, because you never know what you could be missing out on. Just because it
Yeah.
wasn't made in America doesn't mean anything. But this is truly a special film, and I can see why.
Yeah. Don't write it off. Don't write off Nosferatu because it's a silent film. Don't write off Godzilla because it's a black and white guy in a suit. Just don't, man. And with the sequels and all that, I'm not going to pitch you any of the sequels because they get a little ridiculous. They came out pretty much yearly after this. In 1955, we got Godzilla Raids Again is the only other black and white one.
I was gonna say, and I'll ask you this, and then that's all I'm gonna ask you. Is the sequel a follow-up to this, or is it just completely new? Sort of.
It's completely new. I mean,
Okay.
Godzilla's just there, and so is this other monster. The thing that really popped off about it was the monster on screen. That's what people took a liking to. That's what people wanted to see more of. So immediately, it the whole franchise became just like WrestleMania for guys in monster suits,
Yeah.
and it got pretty ridiculous in a lot of them, especially 50s through 70s. Really campy, really goofy, really Power Rangers. There's a lot of stinkers. There's a couple really damn good ones. One of which I'm getting a tattoo of. It's my favorite. But there was timelines. There was timelines like Halloween. Like you have the original Halloween timeline. You have the Cult of Thorn timeline. You have the Resurrection timeline. You have different timelines.
Mhm.
Godzilla's the same way, man. There's different timelines spawning off of this 1954 original. The second timeline's my favorite, but there is one there's one movie that's basically a direct sequel to this, and that is when he dies.
Mhm.
That is the end of his second timeline when it's like his big grand finale. One of my favorite movies of all time. Is so damn good, and it takes pieces from this 1954 original that I didn't appreciate at the time, like the Oxygen Destroyer and like Sarazawa. They recreate the Oxygen Destroyer, but in like the 90s. So it's really cool. I really love that movie, and they make a monster out of it, and it's really beautiful, very biblical allegory too. Um, the
What would you say the original is the best or your favorite or
the the original is not my favorite, but it is the best. I have three favorites. It's this one.
Mhm.
It's the one that came out in the 90s called Godzilla versus Destroya, which is the finale, which is a descendant of this movie. It's
Correct.
beautiful. I'm getting a tattoo of this one. And just won an Oscar the other week. Godzilla movie came out last year called Godzilla Minus One. It's a World War II story movie. Dude, I'm not kidding you, on par with the original 1954. I saw it twice in the theaters, and both the times I came out of it, I said that might be as good as the fucking original. But for it to win an Oscar for best visual effects, 70 years into his lifespan, Godzilla wins his first Oscar. 40 years, 40 movies later, 40 movies ago, he wins his
Oh
first
God.
Oscar. Dude, beautiful, man. It's such a good time to be a Godzilla fan right now. Godzilla Minus One. I cannot wait to buy that on Steelbook. You need to watch it. It's not a horror film, but you need to watch it. It's so damn good. Of course, there's one coming out this month, Godzilla and Kong. We love our big action battles. I already got my tickets for that. There is another Godzilla horror movie that came out in 2016. It's horror enough, and I'm probably going to pitch it to you down the road.
Hmm.
But I love Godzilla, man, and you don't have to get into the whole suitmation monster fights in order to appreciate the original 1954. That's all that matters. You saw the big one, you saw history, you understand why he's still around.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of great things to say about this movie, and I definitely am going to watch it again. I'm going to further research it more because it's just one of those movies where the more you search, the more you find. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
about the movie and meanings and things like that. So if you want, we'll go ahead and get into our ranking. I'll go first. I know I'm gonna save the best for last for you.
You know my rating because I preached it to the high heavens, but I want to hear yours because this is your first time getting into Godzilla. Tell me about it. Be honest about it. Even if it's not for you, where do you rate it?
I went into this movie obviously thinking, you know, it's a creature movie, like, not my favorite genre, but hey, I'm open to anything. And I tried to watch this movie last week and I told you about it. And I'd had a long day working outside. I got home, turned it on, and like 5 minutes I fell asleep. Not because of
Mm-hmm.
the movie, because I was just tired.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, look, I want to give this thing a fair shake because I feel like there's something here. So when I watched it, I was awake, sat down. I even watched it with my headphones in on my computer right here, just sit down and watch it. And as the story is unfolding and things are happening, I'm picking up on all this stuff. Um, I'm gonna give this movie an A. I really am.
Good.
Um, I'm not going, and I'm not saying that because all this is one of Jeff's favorite movies. I have
Right.
to give
Right.
him an A. No, I'm not. I seriously believe this movie is an A. This, along with so many other classics that we've yet to review, just go to show, these movies are 50, 60, 70 years old, 100 years old, but they still say something to this day to people. And that's the sign of a great film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the design of Godzilla itself, if you want to look at it from the aspect of destruction and all this stuff, great, great effects. Great for 1954. I mean, it looks as good as you're going to get. It's incredible. The acting, the characters, for 1954, pretty good, really good. Great storytelling. And the thing I love about this movie is the real life undertones of, happening with dropping bombs and things like that, and real life events that happened in Japan and how it affected people and how it still affects people to this day. And I think, this is a film I definitely want to buy. I know I was something else I was going to ask you. Why is it so hard to get? Is it just because it's in another country? What's the hardest thing about getting these things on DVD, Blu-ray, things like that?
It's tricky. Godzilla retired in 2004, right before Blu-ray really popped on the scene. International release rights really didn't. I mean, I had some of the 90s films on VHS, so they were there. They were
Mhm.
available. You could go to Blockbuster and get them. But in order to get it on Blu-ray nowadays, I just unless it's with the Criterion collection, like that bundle that I have right there, or one that
Right.
you can get on Amazon for $40 right now, you're just not gonna find Godzilla on Blu-ray like you want to. Like this bundle right here, which is like easily valued over $100 right now. I got it for $50 at Walmart a couple years ago.
Mm.
DVDs. I don't do DVDs, but it's all I can get. There's a couple there's a couple of the 90s films that came out as double features on Blu-rays through a third party, but it sucks because it's hard to find Godzilla on Blu-ray. Like you can go to Best Buy or any disc retailer right now, and you can find every Marvel movie on Blu-ray, and they're going to keep printing them out. But no one's printing Godzilla movies unless they're being requested. So that's why they're so expensive and so hard to find. One of the rarest movies, Godzilla versus Biollante. Good luck finding that on Blu-ray. Oh my God. I had that on VHS and I wore it out from watching it so much. But unless it's Criterion and unless it's the original 1954, you basically have to go through a third party. I don't know the exact legalities of it. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's a trademark issue, if it's a Warner Brothers thing. I don't know if it's just a Toho overseas thing. I don't really know the full details on it, but I know that most Godzilla Blu-rays come out through third parties. So we got the original, and we
Right.
got Legendary Pictures and all their movies, and go to eBay for the rest of them.
Correct. Well, luckily on I watched this on Tubi. It seems like there's a great deal of them on Tubi. I don't know how many. There seems like there is a lot. So I mean, I know
Yeah.
we're big on physical media, but sometimes you got to get it how you got to get it.
Yeah, HBO Max has all the first timeline on there. I think all the first timeline. I might be missing one or two, but that first timeline from the 50s to the 70s, starting with this one, it's
Yeah.
got it on HBO Max. So
Awesome. Yeah, this is something I'm definitely gonna have to buy, fork over the $40 to get from the
yeah,
Criterion collection because I
yeah,
love this movie. I want to watch it again. And to kind of piggyback off what I was saying, this film is an A for me. It could maybe one day go into A plus territory. It depends. It's one of those movies where the more I watch it, the more you're gonna pick up on it. It's not what the cover presents you. It's not just a monster destroying
yeah,
buildings. Yes, there is that, but that's not the point of the movie.
right.
And I'm glad you recommended this to me. I can't wait to get further down the timeline, see if there's some things in there that I like, maybe some things I don't like. But hey, I'm glad the way we did this review. I'm glad we didn't go scene by scene. We
Yeah,
just had a passionate fan come in here, explain why the movie's great. I sat back, I watched, I listened, I said my 2 cents, and I agreed for the most part. So Godzilla for me, 1954 gets an A. Go
of
buy
course.
it while you can because we already see Blu-ray is going to start rising in prices. Physical media is going to start rising because there's so many stores not selling it anymore. And
Mhm.
people are going to catch on and it's not going to be cheap anymore. And a movie like Godzilla that's $40 now will probably be $60, $70 within a year or two.
Yeah, and it's $40 after 70 years after it was released. It's a black and white movie from Japan. It's $40. So, and that's with another one coming out this month. So,
Right.
yes, I cannot emphasize that even harder. Get your damn Blu-rays now because a year from now, the prices are going to be ridiculous right now. I just saw 28 Days Later selling for a ridiculous amount on Blu-ray on eBay because it came off streaming services. Thank God I have that.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
God I got my Godzilla movies. I've always had them. I will always have them. Get your Blu-rays. Get this one, even if you don't go down the timelines and get them. 1954's Gojira is one that you need to watch, and there are others that you should watch too because they're staples. Um, I'll give you my rating. It's pretty cut and dry. I said last review I like to do my four cardinal rules of horror. I have four golden rules that I grade horror movies by, but like the last one, Nosferatu, this one is exempt. I think anything before 1960, anything before Hitchcock's Psycho is exempt from those rules. Watch our other videos if you want to see what those rules are, but this one's exempt from the horror rules, also because it's horror enough, like I said in the beginning. So I'll just tell you like it is, man. This is history. I mean, aliens come down 1,000 years from now. We're extinct. They find a tablet of our greatest achievements, 100 greatest achievements. Godzilla's probably like number 71 on there. It's just what it is. Godzilla is a staple. Will always be a staple. Even if this month's movies flop, there's gonna be more. I love Godzilla. You will catch me at the theater every time one comes out, even an anniversary re-release. I love it to death. It's so good. And all the pioneering it did for filmmaking, one of a kind, man. The suitmation, giant monster movies, spectacle, political statements, even, all the way up through 2016. 2016's installment had a really good political message about it with and that one was inspired by Chernobyl. So it just Godzilla is amazing, man. Rating, obviously, A+. Easy, easy, no doubt. One of the best movies, not only that I've ever seen, but I think that the world has ever seen. As it relates to horror, my top 10 horror movies are all A's. This is not going to be in there because it is horror enough. I got to save a spot for a pure horror movie. And even though Godzilla 1954 is an A+ to me, and it's not going to be in my top 10 horror movies of all time, it is without a doubt in my top 10 movies overall of all time, any genre. So yeah, man, absolute staple. Not a regular watch. It's a lot to swallow. But you cannot call yourself a film nerd. You cannot even call yourself a history nerd without at least acknowledging the impact that Godzilla had on this world. So Gojira 1954, A+, one of the best movies of all time.
Simple enough. Well, you heard it here first. Godzilla. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let us know what you think. If you are a big fan of the Godzilla franchise, let us know in the comments. If you want to see more Godzilla films, we will definitely check them out. I'm sure Jeff has no problem with that.
No problem whatsoever.
So let us know. I think we probably have maybe one more black and white horror film before the month is over. Old school horror, and then there are some newer films coming out that I think we want to take a look at and see. But we're always going to do kind of whatever we want. But we like to mix it up between new, old, and in between. So
we're gonna get all of them.
We're gonna get all of them. So whatever you guys want to do, let us know. But thank you guys for watching every horror film where horror is forever, and we'll see you on the next one.
The mummy has now been located.
The living mummy. The living mummy.
Bullets won't stop.
Some creature out of time.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
He's completely out of control.
I saw those bodies.
Is he a man or a monster?
You actually knew a werewolf in a peaceful town where nothing ever happened.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
In the mystical regions of Transylvania.